So you take all the bad stuff of a mountain, and then you put you just add an earthquake to it, and the earthquake never stops. It's not a 7-minute long earthquake. It's 24/7. It just keeps going, and the torrential rain and the winds and the waves got so bad. I didn't sleep for 40. Let's see.
Oh man.
4.5 days. I hit a second wind about, I guess, day 22. I got to day 21. That was a bad day.
Really?
Because I'm like, yeah, you know, I'm mentally prepared. I've been on a mountain for 3 weeks. I get the ups and downs, but I didn't have any experience after day 21. So 22, I got a second wind, and then I actually got a third wind about day 24, 25, a couple days before I got off. But I remember calling one of my board members. He tells this story better than I do, but I just called him and said, I'm done. This was like day 25. And I said, I'm gonna have to get a third wind because the second one's gone. I feel horrible. I've got a chest infection. I just had a boat come out to give me steroids and an antibiotic. I'm not going to tell anybody on screen on the shows that I'm sick, because what happens is, if you say those kind of things, by then we had an audience of 40, 50,000 people. Sure. You know, if you say I've got a chest infection, then 18 doctors come out on boats, which is wonderful. Sure. But I mean, the response is overwhelming compared to the issues. So you keep those things quiet. But I was done. Well, you did a good job masking some of that. I could tell towards the end, and I came in towards the end. Yeah, I'm sure you could tell. And I could tell you at least were sleep deprived a bit, just your eyes, and you could tell you were fatigued. But I had no idea, just the psychological challenge. Yeah, it was all those things that you said. It really was. It was the most challenging thing that I've done. And you would have to have gone with me on some of these climbs to realize just how, just how challenging some of my other. So talk a little bit about, because I'm intrigued with knowing that side of how God wires you and put you together, because it's not normal. I mean, just from the standpoint of the average person is not going to necessarily imagine these types of goals and go through it. I mean, I think that's just it's a special type of person that has the willpower, determination. How has that factored into your own faith walk, your journey, really in terms of discipleship? Because in my mind, let me kind of tee this up a little bit. I've been thinking here the last year or two there at Dallas Christian, as parents, and sort of the Gen Z now, but we kind of talked a lot about millennials, that type of thing, and I think in some ways they get a bad rap and some stereotypes that aren't necessarily accurate. But I agree. I'm probably guilty as a parent, because my instinct is to create sort of this path that is smooth for my 3 daughters, and I think I'm doing a great service to them when life seems relatively easy or easier for them. And I'm realizing that it's actually quite the opposite, that a big part of human development is the ability to identify early on that you can endure hardships, crises, tragedies, and there's something therapeutic about that, and I want to say even spiritual, that the artificial environment ecosystem that we tend to do as parents, as we want to kind of hover, and it's not even helicopter parenting anymore. It's like drone parenting. It's we're tracking our kids. And so anyway, that's kind of a disjointed way of asking you, how has those experiences factored into your parenting, but also into your approach to following Jesus? So that's a great question with parenting. I think, and I'm still wondering whether we've done anything right or wrong with all 3 of our kids. I've got one in college, 2 in high school right now. But I will say this, Parker, my oldest is my son. I've got 2 daughters. And with Parker, I told him from the time he was real little, I said, I'm going to pray that you fall on your face and make mistakes while you're under my roof. And then I'm going to pray that when you do, you get caught. And he used to get so ticked off with that. He used to get so angry. He's like, why you got to pray that to God? I'm going, cuz I want to be able to have those discussions with you. Well, sure enough, we've talked since he got into college. There's some things I didn't know about and stuff like that, which is totally normal. But there were times that he did get caught making some decisions that either, caused some heartache for him, challenged our relationship in some way. Thankfully, nothing huge. It could have been.
Sure.
But the ones that he got caught on, we were able to have discussions. And I remember Steve Stroop was mentioning this in the when you guys were together in the car about how you parent everyone different, right? Every single child, you have 10 kids, they're all going to be different. You got to parent them a different way. Couldn't agree more with that. My son, I realized that the more authoritative I was in his life, the more rebellious he got. And so I shifted from authoritarian parent at his sophomore year in high school, and I mean a 180-degree shift to a advisor, coach, counselor.
Okay. And
when he would get caught doing something or there's a challenge, I go, look, I would, instead of getting upset or really laying down the law, which just didn't work with him, it worked with my middle child, and very effectively. She likes the borders and the structure. Parker, much more like me, very independent-minded, almost rebels against the structure just to rebel against the structure.
Sure.
So I changed to more of a consulting role with him. I said, look, you know the rules, here's what's going to happen in the house. And instead of getting upset about it, I go, we both know that. You can get upset about it or not, but let's just get that to the side. You got caught doing something, here's the situation. Now let's talk about it. What happened? What got you there? What do you think you learned from it? And it shifted our entire structure to a really healthy discussion about some of the challenges he was dealing with, to the point where I'm one of the first people, if not the first person he goes to, regardless of what the good or bad thing is he's going through, which has been just an incredible thing for me, especially since he's gone off to college. I say all that to say that it's those challenges. I think as parents, one thing I've learned through mountain climbing and the struggles and getting to the end of my mental capability, thinking that, I am at the end of myself. I've come to that so many times. I think sometimes we parent people out of the we parent our kids out of the very struggles they're supposed to go through, or they should go through, or that it's more healthy for them to go through when they're under our roof so that we can have those discussions. I really believe this. I believe with technology today, it's like George Orwell 1984. I think kids are constantly being tracked. They don't even have the freedom to make bad choices and experience the consequences of it.
That's right.
I really believe that with all my heart. And so, yes, there's some benefit to that tracking system, but just to let you know, we decided, my wife and I, and it was a difficult decision, we don't put Find My Friends on the phone. We don't track our kids. But the idea of not allowing a person a single moment of true privacy between them and God to make decisions on their own and to make mistakes on their own, I think is horribly challenging.
Well, I like how you put that, Todd, because those are some of the same conversations that that we have from time to time as we think about, rather than trying to shape the road or the path for the child, you shape the child for the path, type idea. And there's something about failure that is very healthy.
Yeah, so that was I'm sorry, you asked me about how these trials have shaped my spiritual formation, etc. My parenting has been driven a lot by this, because falling on my face, getting in too deep with some of these mountains, and I have. Like, I've been humbled. Those are defining moments for me. And I think some kids aren't even allowed to get to the end of themselves until they get to college, and then they absolutely go nuts.
Right.
And I think all we do, they break down. They don't know how to manage crisis. They don't know who to talk to when it comes.
Sure.
They just don't. They don't have any coping mechanisms because they never fell on their face at an aggressive enough level to have those discussions with their parents.
That's right.
Anyway.
And the statistics we're seeing, as we talk to a lot of folks in higher ed, and not to diminish at all the need for medicines, for anti-anxiety, depressants, those sorts of things. Those are absolutely viable and legitimate, totally understand that. But now they're seeing epidemic rates of college-age kids who are having a hard time coping with life. And
no decision-making ability.
Yeah.
Not handling crisis well.
Right. Oh yeah, and these are kids who, and probably we're a bit culpable in K-12 in that we've created a hyper academic environment, and we've probably been part of the the cultural lie, which says you have to be part of this academic race, this scores, you have to perform, you need this college resume, and parents, we've done it with good intentions, I think, but the end product is a type of human being who every adult in their life is someone they have to please, rather than there being a relational connectivity that helps them to develop and mature. And so they've kind of gassed out, and then they get to these, you know, these places of some very prestigious, and they end up coming home a year or two later. I hear these stories some from my colleagues around the country who run schools. What I'm saying is there's a conversation shift on helping our kids to be a little more well-balanced, but also giving them opportunities to, as you said, reach the end of themselves, because that's something that's incredibly healthy and therapeutic. And you see this with training, with exercise. You see this in all sorts of areas, that you build a type of resilience and grit when you fail, when you try to tackle a goal that's ambitious, and maybe you don't quite reach the goal, but really the journey is what brought you the wisdom and the strength and the discernment, and that doesn't happen unless you really kind of go after something. And to your point, do it when you have a network at home.
Yeah, do it with the support system. That's right. Exactly right. Imagine getting to the end of yourself by yourself in a dormitory 3 months into a college freshman year.
Sure.
That's what happens.
Yep.
And they've never experienced that moment where they can go downstairs or go to the next bedroom and go, Dad, I need some help. Or to a teacher, I need some help, or whatever that is. They don't even know that's okay. Anyway, that's a whole side note, but that's what some of these things have taught me, to allow, from a parenting perspective, although it's hurtful and painful, and I don't want them to hurt, it's better for at least my children, as we talk through this, to have some privacy. Sure. To be able to have the freedom to make decisions when no one's watching, because, you know, integrity is what you do when no one's watching. The problem is we have children that have not have had a single moment where no one's watching. And what is that?
Yeah, and I'm telling you, because of technology, we've created a very different type of human being. Even the things like, you know, when we were growing up, if I got into trouble, get sent to our rooms, you know, you were forced to kind of just sit, right? Well, something very therapeutic happens when you're forced to deal with your own thoughts. But we're developing a human being that is never, they're not comfortable with their own thoughts, because they're never alone with their thoughts. They're on their phone every time they turn around. And so what used to be boredom, which fuels creativity, by the way, we know that now from a neuroscience standpoint, now we've got people who are constantly, you know, connected. They're constantly in this digital on position, and so they haven't become accustomed to being comfortable in their own thoughts and their own skin. And so we're really trying to walk some of that back into House Christian in terms of some of these intentional digital detox moments. And for example, you know, we're so conditioned with social media now that we get these sound bites, and we follow people, and some of life's biggest questions are answered in about 140 characters. And when you want to say to a young emerging adult, you haven't even thought about that for any period of time. But anyway, it's just this artificial existence that's you know, very much sort of this matrix that we're in.
Well, so in just listening to what you're saying, and you've got a very specific role of leadership and oversight in an incredible school with incredible, not just potential, but proven results from the kids that are coming out of that environment. To know, just as a parent, you know, to know that you guys are struggling and addressing those issues from a far more educated perspective than I have is exciting. And you were mentioning, so how do you parent differently because of these challenges? You got to let them fall on their face, right? Number two, the spiritual side that you mentioned before. I think the entire theme of the barge for me was there's redemption on the other side of storms, right? There's always redemption with God on the other side of a storm. The storm always subsides. There is a last wave in that given moment, and
that's good.
That was helpful to me, right? Because every time a new storm came in, and there were a lot of them over that 27 days, like horrible weather, there was always a calm at the end of that given storm. There was always a redemptive moment. There was always a time of recovery. There was a respite, you know, from the challenge that was just enough to get me to the next storm. It turned out, but spiritually, that's a big thing,
right?
Yeah.
I mean, because you were kind of cycling.
Yeah, I mean, that's the topography of life, right? You've got these mountaintops and these valleys, some more than others at some times at different chapters in your life, but there really are times, and I think, you know, for people that are going through whatever challenges they're going through, family problems, business problems, health issues, whatever it is, yeah, there's so many people that just say, you know what, just like with the disciples in the boat with Jesus in the storm, if another wave hits, we're going down, basically, right? I cannot take another wave, and yet the wave hits and you're still there.
Yeah, I bet.
I really love it.
Todd, thanks, man.
Yeah, thank you. Listen, I appreciate everything you do with this, man. I'm excited to see more of these
yeah, we've got our different types of people lined up just to go grab coffee and talk and
love it.
push this out.
I think it's brilliant.